Hi there, this is Ron Rogers, and this video is titled USAF Pilot Instructor Tales, the dreaded stand-up briefing. Now, I've been redoing some of my old videos, and if you see, now I made mistakes at the beginning. I used the term entitled, and we all know what about entitlements. It's okay. Anyway, I'm not going to go there. But somebody pointed out that no, your videos aren't entitled; they are titled. Okay, so I correct that, and of course I got a better microphone. The audio in some of the first ones wasn't too bad. I got this microphone faster than I thought I did, though. I thought I had more of the kind of bad audio. But anyway, it's interesting to look at my old videos and see how I have progressed and gotten better equipment, better lighting and stuff like that. A lot of time my face is in shadows there, but I'm digressing. Okay, we're talking about the stand-up briefing. Now, in Air Force pilot training, you would have a briefing in the morning, and as you can see the boards there, they'd show what the winds were and how that would affect you in the pattern and all sorts of various things. And one of the main functions was we'd have testing the students' knowledge on emergency procedures, and it would be the Standup officer's duty, which is me. Now, these pictures, this is so long ago it's black and white. This is back in the early 70s, and I actually took these pictures myself as the one of the two yearbook editors. I was the yearbook editor for my section, and there was another guy who was the yearbook editor for his section, but I actually shot these myself using Tri-X. For you photographers out there, and actually Vance Air Force Base had its own dark room, and I and the other guy, Heck was his name, we actually developed our own film and printed our own pictures. He actually did a little bit better job in his pictures. Some of mine aren't the best, but I dug into a drawer and found these old pictures, and it was kind of funny. I came across this one and showed it to my wife. That is my wife. This is, 50 years ago or so. And that's a very young me and a very young wife, and a very beautiful wife, in my humble opinion. But her comment was, boy, those were short shorts back then. And yeah, that was the style. Okay, well, stand-up briefing. Okay, you got the flight room there. You got the students sitting back there in apprehension, hoping that they're not going to be the ones called upon. Some of them are taking it harder than others in dreadful fear. But one of the persons who was also in fear of the stand-up briefing was the scheduler, because the scheduler puts together the schedule for the day. And these are plastic name tags we used. I've still got mine. These are plastic name tags, went up on the board. They were magnetic. And he spent a lot of time working on this schedule, coordinating the students, the instructors, and stuff like that. And nothing messed up his schedule faster than the Standup officer calling on a student and grounding him. And I've got a couple tales about a couple of students. But like I said, the intention was not for them to fail. You would hand out a hypothetical situation. Usually it was a situation that involved an emergency checklist. And of course, the student would stand, and in the process, you would determine that they could handle the procedure properly. They could, of course, use their checklist, because in the aircraft they would have that. And in the process, you would also assess that they did have good procedural knowledge. Now, for a number of us, this was nothing. I mean, if you were raised by Sister Mary of Occasional Mercy, coming through school, stand-up briefing didn't scare you at all. And of course, fair game was all the emergency procedures, which are in Section 3 of the -1, which is our flight manual, and there are a lot of them. And you could handle an emergency by reference to the checklist, but there were some emergencies that you were supposed to handle from memorization. They were called boldface because, now wait for it, yes, it was written in boldface type, like ejection was arming handles raise and hand grips raise. I'm sorry, I would have had to fail myself there. It's arming handles raise, trigger squeeze. Now, about the halfway time I'm going through an instructor, we went from hand grips raise to arming handles raise, and so that was quite a transition. You had to get that right, and there were, I was not one, but there were some people who were almost foul defecation type of people that they would ground for that minor infraction. We really did try to give the people a break, as opposed to some of my earlier videos where the flight commander had a vendetta against a student. But anyway, we tried to give them a break, but they had to know a lot of procedural knowledge. There were a lot of books, and we studied hard. And of course, it would demonstrate. They would demonstrate their knowledge of not only limitations but how the various systems worked. And sometimes these systems could get fairly complex. But okay, you bring the guy up, you have him stand, you present a situation, and I'm going to talk about two situations that were okay, kind of more interesting, out of the unusual. Okay, normally you would outline the situation, you'd let the room settle, you'd there'd be a little bit of pause, and then you'd call on somebody, and they'd stand and handle it. Usually it went quite well. There'd be a little bit of instructions at time on how maybe they could have, done something slightly differently, or, stuff like that. But basically, it went fairly smoothly, and students were not very often grounded at all. But of course, it was always the instructor in the back of the room that was always also anticipating this whole event. Now, we did have a couple of students that were, I hate to say it, but if you called on them, it was deer in the headlights, and this was just not something you wanted. Okay, and in fact, one student, he flew okay, but whenever you would call him, his mind would just shut off. When he stood up, I think all the blood went out of his brain, because if you gave him an emergency, he wasn't going to fly that day. It was just like that. Okay, he just wasn't going to fly. And in fact, I am in the front of the room addressing the students. Everybody's looking forward, but the instructors are in the back of the room, and the scheduler's back there too. And I called on this one individual who had never passed a stand-up briefing, the emergency situation. And I mean, we're trying, we're not trying to kill the kid. Okay, we're trying to give him a chance. But it was just a known. When I called upon this guy, when he'd stand up, the scheduler one time goes back to the board and he just flicks his name off. And I mean, I'm up there, nobody can see the other instructors or the scheduler or what he's done, and I'm trying not to, break out laughing, because if I call on the guy and he stands up and I start laughing, that how does that go over? It doesn't go over well. But the scheduler was not helpful here. But I remember one situation. I thought he was going to do okay, because I called up and I said, I called him, gave him the situation, and I said, basically, your hydraulic gauge is indicating zero pressure. Now, on the T-37, the hydraulics ran the gear and the flaps. So, if you didn't have hydraulics, you could still operate the airplane. You could blow down the gear. You could land no flap. No big deal, okay? Not a lot of backup systems on these aircraft. Enough to get the gear down, because that's important, but you didn't care about the flaps, okay? So you could land, with the flaps up. Didn't matter. That big of a deal, a little bit extra airspeed. But anyway, okay, I'm digressing here. The situation was zero hydraulic pressure on the gauge. And I call on the student. Okay, he stands up, and I said, what are you going to do? And before I could even say that, the scheduler had flipped his name tag off. But he said, well, either I have zero hydraulic pressure or the gauge is in air. And I go, that's correct. I mean, you could see the excitement in my face, because he often didn't get that far. And then I said, so what are you going to do? And it was the deer in the headlights. And I said, well, you said it could either be the gauge or you had zero hydraulic pressure. How would you evaluate which it was? Still silence. All right, his instructor's giving the look like, oh, you gotta be kidding. And the scheduler is going, he's flipped his name off. That's it. Okay, we're done here. So unfortunately, I had to ground him. And it was kind of sad, because his flying ability was decent. But he knew he was not going to be an Air Force pilot. It was just not going to happen. Because, he had failed to stand up. I'd sit down with him. We'd go over, the material. He knew it well enough, and he'd go flying the next day. But he knew, and I think we all knew, he was just not cut out to be an Air Force pilot. So, unfortunately, he held in long enough to go to the 38s. He wanted to fly the T-38. He got actually to solo the T-38, and then he says, I'm done. That's it. I can't go on. And it was kind of, he did SIE, self-induced expulsion. It was kind of sad, but he and everybody else knew that it just wasn't cut out for him. And then, of course, like I said, you got the guys in the back of the room there, and the students can't see him, but I give a situation to another student, and I said, okay, you're out in the area and you have total electrical failure, which was, and I did a video on this. That's something I experienced at night, which was not a good time to experience, just having broken out of the weather at a base that wasn't your own base. But anyway. Okay, digress. Okay, but here's the deal. I said, okay, you've got total electrical failure. And I said, what are you going to do? And he says, well, I'd key the mic and I'd tell the supervisor of flying, the SOF, that I've got total electrical failure. And of course, the flight commander's in the back of the room and he starts laughing. I mean, here I am trying to conduct a serious briefing. He starts laughing. He says, if you call me up and you tell me that you got complete electrical failure, I'm not going to tend to believe you. And unfortunately, the whole thing went downhill kind of after that. And he ended up grounded. In the duration of a class, which would be close to 6 months or so, I would, there would be like 3 or 4 students get grounded during the stand-up briefing, which was done every morning. So it wasn't a big amount, but yeah, it happened. But anyway, that's the tale of Air Force pilot training, stand-of-L, emergency procedure, checklist operations, and, knowing how to get through it. Thanks for watching.